Hi there. In a break from my usual transport content, I'll be looking at Tasmania's next elections, the 2026 Legislative Council periodic elections. I'll be looking at the candidates announced so far, how I think the elections can go, and everything you need to know about the elections. A background: Tasmania has a fascinating electoral system, with the elections of the upper and lower houses effectively reversed. The lower house is elections every 3 to 4 years, electing 7 members each across 5 districts. However, the upper house has 15 single-member districts across the state, with 6-year terms spread out, with 1 or 2 seats having elections each year. As an example, last year there were elections for the seats of Montgomery, Nelson, and Pembroke. Labour retained Pembroke, independent Meg Webb strongly increased her holding on Nelson, and independent Casey Hiskett gained Montgomery off the Liberals. This year we have 2 high-stakes races. The 2 seats being contested are Rosevears and Huon. Rosevears is a key northern seat, containing parts of suburban Launceston and the West Tamar region. The seat was won on a only 1-point margin by Joe Palmer for the Liberal Party in 2020, who has since become the Minister for Education. Huon is the other seat being contested. While less of an important vote for the government, it could be a very interesting race. Huon was won in 2020 by Bastian Siddell for the Labour Party on a comfortable margin, with a low primary vote. Siddell resigned from the Labour Party a year into his term and resigned from Parliament late in 2021, causing a by-election in Huon in 2022. This was a very tight 4-way race between Labour's Tony Thorpe, Independent Dean Harris, Liberal Aldo Antoli, and Green Gideon Cordova, all getting around 20% primary vote. Dean Harris managed to win the seat 52-48 in the two-party preferred against Labour. I'll go through both elections one at a time to explain the circumstances there. Firstly, we'll describe Huon. As previously mentioned, the seat is held by Dean Harris on a 4% margin against Labour. This seat covers the regional Huon Valley and Channel regions, including Bruny Island and a small part of urban Kingston. The area contains a mixture of commuter towns to Hobart, regional towns, and remote areas. The seat was a tight 4-way contest in 2022, with votes of 25% to Labour, 23% to Harris, 22% to the Liberals, and 20% to the Greens. The Huon Valley is a relatively progressive area as Tasmania goes, with strong local footholds for the Greens and progressive independents. This was why the 2022 by-election result was so surprising, as Harris is a conservative independent. The overlapping state and federal division of Franklin is represented by Labour on a federal level, and on a state level contains 2 Liberals, 2 Labour, 2 Independents, one being Boyner environmentalist campaigner Peter George, and 1 Green, being party leader Rosalie Woodruff, herself a Huon Valley resident. I imagine this seat will remain as a very narrow seat, with 4 or even 5 candidates in winning range. The first candidate announced for Huon was current Deputy Mayor of Kingborough Council, Claire Glade Wright. She is running on a campaign similar to many teal and left-wing candidates, with policies including expanding the development of social housing, expanding the Derwent ferry system, making school buses free, expanding renewable energy production in Tasmania, a tourism levy for Bruny Island, the introduction of a Tasmanian Charter of Human Rights, standing up for LGBTQIP+ rights, supporting multicultural communities, the establishment of a treaty with the Palawa Aboriginal community in Tasmania, making education accessible to all students, creating an anti-corruption body for Tasmania, and scrapping the proposed Macquarie Point Stadium. The next candidate announced was Hobart City Council worker and Pepperberry farmer Abby McKibben. She's running for the Tasmanian Labour Party. I can't find a list of her campaign promises anywhere, but as a Labour candidate I can assume it will be similar, including supporting salmon farming and forestry industries in Huon. She's recently spoken up in support of better environmental protections for sand flathead fish, which will be banned from being fished in southeastern Tasmania at the start of March due to a severe decline in population numbers. For now, I can't find any clear evidence that Dean Harris plans on recontesting the seat, which I hope we'll find out clarity on in the next few weeks. The Tasmanian Greens are expected to field a candidate in the election, and potentially the Tasmanian Liberals as well. So, it's time to discuss how this election could turn out. Huon is a large regional electorate with strong left-leaning environmentalist streaks. The seat will likely be a narrow race regardless, with any candidate able to win the seat. My honest thoughts are that Dean Harris, if he runs, or Claire Glade Wright are the most likely to win the seat, but Abby McKibben has a very real path, especially if Dean Harris does not run. I imagine the seat will be run relatively comfortably at the two-party preferred, but very narrow in who actually gets into it. There is an outside chance of a Green candidate or a tiny chance of a Liberal candidate winning the seat, but unless they have strong name recognition candidates, I can't see that happening. Additionally, the endorsement of Claire Glade Wright by local advocacy group Voices of Franklin may help strengthen her vote. My final prediction for Huon is an independent retain, with a margin of about 8 points, but which independent it is, I can't predict. The second seat to discuss is the division of Rosevears. This seat covers two major regions. This is the entirety of the West Tamar Council, as well as the suburb of Trevally and a large area of Western Launceston, being part of the city centre, West Launceston, Summerhill and Prospect. There's currently one challenger confirmed and a likely recontester from Joe Palmer. Labour announced their candidate for the election on the 18th of January, being Launceston schoolteacher Ben McKinnon. This will be a very steep campaign for Labour from the start, with them having an appalling result in 2020 with only 9% of the vote. However, the race ended up with a margin of only 1% against independent Janie Finlay, which some of you may recognise as they joined the Tasmanian Labour Party and are now one of their two state MPs in Bass. Since we don't have any independent or minor party candidates announced yet, let's skip to how I think this election will go. I'm on the ground in Rosevears a lot, which hopefully should let me understand it a bit better than Huon. In 2020, the primary vote was at 41% Liberal, 30% Janie Finlay, 9% Labour, 7% Green and 13% to other independents. There's no polling available for the election, so I have to guess how this will go. My prediction here will be based off a combination of state level election results in the area and my observations as going there a lot. At the state election in Bass, across all the booths inside the current division of Rosevears, 13,680 votes were counted, with a three-party preferred of 48% to the Liberals, 29% to Labour and 21% to the Greens. These are almost identical over the urban and regional areas, which is a very interesting thing, as you would normally expect stronger Liberal results in the rural areas of the electorate. This excluded all minor party and independent candidates, however. Most of the time, Legislative Council results don't follow the state results, and several key incidents include Palmer's support of the deeply unpopular Macquarie Point Stadium, which I believe has approximately a negative 40 approval rate in the overlapping state and federal seat of Bass. Rosevears does cover more traditionally right-leaning areas, but Riverside, West Riverside, Trevally, Launceston and West Launceston booths swung massively towards the Greens, with swings of over 10% in times in the state election under a year ago. Until we have more candidates, I can't reasonably predict a result for here, but it will certainly be close. A Palmer loss would be a huge blow to the Tasmanian Liberals, and considering the current situation in the state and other politics, I believe there is a tiny chance Premier Rockcliffe could resign after a loss in one of their former heartlands. This brings me to the end of this video, I guess. I'll probably have at least one more video out on this before the election, and hopefully some live content on polling night. If you live in Huon or Rosevears, the election is on the 2nd of May, so remember to vote. If you want to keep up to date on the election and other news about Tasmania, join my Discord server to discuss this. Thank you very much for watching the video, and I'll see you next time on Tasmanian.